Greetings and welcome to In Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Now, we have had a bit of radio silence of sorts from Tobago for some time. Now, this conversation, it circles around issues dealing with the Studley Park Enterprise Limited, a site that boasts of having the best quality and most sought-after aggregate in the region. Now, I'm not sure whether or not to call our guest the former Executive Chairman of SPEL or the current, but definitely he is a corporate financial specialist. Mr. David Walker joins us now. Greetings, Mr. Walker. There have been occasions that we've spoken and you've worn different hats. So please lay it out. What kind of parameters are we dealing with today?
Today we will be dealing principally with the situation that has developed at the Studley Park Quarry. The producer, as you say, of the premium aggregate across the Caribbean, an aggregate that is desperately sought after by potential buyers, mostly in Guyana, but across the region as well. So it is a quarry that has a fantastic future ahead of it. And I have been privileged to be, given the opportunity to guide it towards that bright future for Tobago and for all of Trinidad and Tobago. But unfortunately, we've abruptly run into some challenges with respect to the leadership and the direction of the company.
All right, so there's that saying that people don't stone empty mango trees. So just in terms of giving us some of those pros of SPEL, please, because when I hear andesite, I normally think of the volcano around Montserrat. But what are some of those pros to have the leadership of SPEL being something that we're discussing at this point in time?
Right, well, you're absolutely right. Andesite is rock that's created out of volcanic activity. And that is what gives it the properties that are most sought after. It is amongst the hardest rocks available for the construction sector. And with Guyana presently attempting some construction and infrastructural work on a scale not seen before, there is a huge demand for aggregate as a whole, but for andesite in particular, which is why the quarry represents a tremendous opportunity, as I said, not just for Tobago, but for the national economy as well. To put it into some numerical perspective, Guyana, because of the negotiations I was having at the senior level in Guyana, they had said to us that they really are looking for up to 6 million tons of aggregate in 2023 alone. Now, there's no way in the world that the quarry in Tobago can supply that, which therefore means that we're in a situation where we really don't have to go out and look desperately for sales. The sales are coming to us and virtually begging us. So it's really a production issue and negotiating good contracts. And that's what we've been attempting to do for the past few months.
But it seems as though there's conversation about SPEL. So we've been hearing some things from the Prime Minister, the Chief Secretary James. Is there anything, because I know the situation is a bit interesting, for want of a better term, at this point in time, but that insider perspective, what are some of those things that you can share with us?
Well, I have to be very careful with what I say because there are contentious issues which will very well spill over into legal issues. So I have to be a little careful. So forgive me if sometimes I don't go as far as you think that the listening public might want. The situation is this. The previous board, of which I had the privilege to be the executive chair, was working very hard in putting plans together and starting to implement those plans to get the production to the levels that we need. The reality is that over the past months and years, the capacity to produce has fallen away terribly. We were struggling to produce 40,000 tons a month, when what we ought to be aiming for in the short term is about 100,000 tons a month, building up from there. Now, as I say, I have been in the position of executive chairman, For reasons unknown to me, the secretary to whom we report made a decision that I was to be replaced as executive chairman by Ashworth Jack. To this date, I have received nothing in writing that validates that position. In fact, requests have been made formally to the Executive Council asking them to either agree or not that I had been removed from my position. I am still awaiting a response, even though I sent in the request through my attorney. So that's where we're at. In the meantime, Mr. Jack has taken over control of the company, so we're in this situation where, as far as I am legally concerned, I am still in the position, I am still under contract. I have a contract for a year which expires at the end of August. At the same time, you have someone else sitting in the chair of the executive chairman, signing contracts, negotiating on behalf of the company. So it is hardly an ideal situation, especially given the hopes and aspirations we had for this company. At the current selling prices, Studley Park Quarry ought to have been turning over roughly $2.5 million a month. That's where we should be now. We know we are near there, we're not likely to get there. For a few months, no matter who is in charge up at the quarry. So all of these issues have stymied the ability of the company to progress.
But what does that do in terms of having, and I don't know if transition is the best word, but some level of continuity? So you're saying that conversations would have been had with, for a client who wants more than Studley Park would be able to produce. So definitely that's a client you want to keep. So in terms of that level of continuity, where are things at as you understand them at this point?
You've absolutely hit one of the nails on the head. The issue of continuity is something that troubles me greatly. As I suggested, we've been in discussions, we've been in negotiations. We've been in negotiations with people at the very top in Guyana. I can't call names, but the way Guyana has structured this development push is that the government is not getting engaged in contracts itself. It is using contractors to do all the work, to source the materials and so on. It is those high-level contractors that we've been talking with, and we were in a position, the only reason we had not signed contracts is that I, on behalf of the board, was not prepared to sign contracts committing ourselves to delivering quantities that I know we could not produce in the short term. So we were in the business of getting the additional equipment in and would then have signed contracts. In the interim, we were speaking with the contractors who were prepared to wait. They understood what we were about. They in fact, approved the notion that we would not sign contracts until we were sure that we could deliver against that. We were also in serious negotiations with ministries in Trinidad. You will be aware, and I know a lot of listeners and viewers will be aware, that there was a lot of controversy about the granting of export licenses and the granting of the permits that we require in order to blast the material. We had been in very advanced negotiations. There were some challenging issues, but we were coming together. The position taken by the secretary and by the persons he's appointed is a far more confrontational one, where they are accusing people at the ministry of all kinds of bad faith and so on. I am personally not of the view that that is the way for us to progress. I was confident that given the discussions we were having, that within a month or two, we would have gotten the permits and licenses that we were seeking. There are ways to resolve these issues, short of getting into a fight with the very people who have the control of the licenses that we need.
And with that, I want us to take a short break. We're actually speaking with a corporate financial specialist, Mr. David Walker. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are discussing the leadership of Studley Park Enterprise Limited. We're doing so with a corporate financial specialist, someone who until very recently has been physically at the helm of SPEL, David Walker. And I'm wondering, Mr. Walker, how does this, I almost want to feel like a social worker, how do you feel in terms of someone asking you to put your efforts where your mouth is? Because many times people have answers from an armchair, but then when offered with the position, they say, no man, I'm good where I am. But you're someone who said, okay, well, no, okay, well, I'm being called to serve, so I'm going to do so. What are some of those main things or other nails on the head, to use your term of reference, that come to the fore where you are in this position?
You focus on a very, very important point there. When I was offered the opportunity to take on this position, I did have to consider whether I wanted to deal with what I expected would be challenging issues, not from a technical standpoint, because I'm very, very confident about my ability in that arena, but the political side of it. I was troubled. But I made a decision in the end, spurred on by a few friends as well, that we all are technocrats, we have expertise, and we talk a lot. And the consensus was, having talked a lot, having put forward better ways that we felt could assist the country, that when presented with the opportunity, I really didn't have a choice. I had to accept the opportunity and to put my best foot forward. The challenge was always going to be what we loosely describe as political interference. And let me digress a little bit to say I don't agree with that term, political interference. What we have is interference by politicians. And maybe one day we could have a little time to discuss what's the difference. But in essence, interference by politicians is for the benefit of that politician who interferes, as opposed to what I would consider political interference is political interference in decision-making at board level in pursuit of a clearly articulated political objective. That is not the case with most of the interference we have here. But that is just a little aside that perhaps we could have a longer chat about at some other point in time. What troubles me about this as well goes beyond myself. We hear so much talk about our diaspora and what the diaspora could bring to the table, and almost every politician talks about bringing our expertise back to the country to the benefit of the country. What does it say then when you get that expertise and then that expertise is being told that they simply have to implement decisions made by somebody else? I do not see that we are going to encourage our best minds, the people who have gained lots of expertise in the private sector mostly, but sometimes in the public sector internationally. And they want to come back and utilize their expertise to the benefit of the nation. But when you have situations like this, where in effect, I am being told by the politician that this is how you run the organization. This is who you sell to. This is who you buy from. That you must give credit to this particular individual. I cannot comply with that and feel satisfied that I have delivered the benefits to the country that I had anticipated being able to deliver. It is very, very important, to my mind, that we get around to having, if you like, this first batch of experts who are prepared to come back and give up their talent and expertise. It is very important to let them operate in much the same way that they have operated elsewhere.
And looking at you said that SPEL wasn't necessarily close to what you were trying to do, even though, one, you were in conversations to get certain things done in terms of like the blast license and what have you. But in terms of a timeline rolling out, had you still been there substantively, physically in the office, what are some of those points, incremental points that you would have been trying to do to get closer to feeling that you're comfortable now to sign with these contractors from Guyana?
We needed to get our production levels to a reasonable point. We had actually set certain goals, as you do. You know, you have your timelines, you have your targets, and so on. So we had goals. We had the 50,000, we had the 80,000, 100,000 per month, and with that, we knew that we would generate revenue of a certain level that would make us highly profitable, so that we also had anticipated looking at downstream activities once we had stabilized the aggregates production and sales. There are lots of things that we could have gotten into, bricks, a lot of derivative products out of this wonderful aggregate that we had available to us. So yes, there was a plan. It was essentially in 3 phases. The short-term phase was simply to get us up to a level of production that we could start to adequately supply the Guyanese market. And then it was ramping that up to the really profitable levels. And then thirdly, it was getting into these other markets, not just other products, but also other locations other than Guyana.
And we have about a minute more, Mr. Walker. What is the best case scenario you think to come to a resolution where your situation is resolved, one, but there's also a situation that benefits the country of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, as you've been saying?
We have to run these organizations as if we really want them to be profitable and to benefit the nation. We can't continue running them as if it's part of a division or part of a ministry. If it is to be run that way, just take it back into the division. Let's stop pretending that we want them to be successful. And bear in mind, and I wish I had a little more time to delve into this, we've now had the procurement legislation passed through Parliament. We have to ensure that that is applied rigorously. We had taken steps under my tenure at the quarry. For example, we made ourselves open to freedom of information requests. No freedom of information request could have been refused under my tenure unless it came to me. Because we were open and transparent, we should be able to disclose anything to anybody, barring legal or confidentiality issues. We brought in the Integrity Commission, who lectured us and guided us as to how to comply with them. And in this situation, I would also have tried to bring in the procurement regulator so that we ensure that we fully compliant with it. And I am not sure that that was well received by everybody.
All right, but we want to thank you so much for your time and looking at the work done thus far. Because like I said, many people prefer to sit in their armchair or in their neck of the woods and comment from afar. But David Walker, Corporate Financial Specialist, thank you for your time. On behalf of the entire TTT News team, I'm Dike Rostant. This has been In Depth with me. Thank you so much for joining us.